But looking back now, it was just the beginning. What I thought I lost was everything, but what I actually lost was just a different version of me. So when my ex-husband came and said to me he wanted a divorce, I just felt like my whole world was shattered. My whole identity was as my wife and mother, and I didn't know who I was outside that role. All I cared about was my children and my husband and their well-being, although to some extent I'll admit probably the children. Because like a lot of people, I attribute this to Melanie Hamlet, had a king baby, although I didn't recognise what it actually was at the time because I was so embroiled and enmeshed in it. So my identity of being a wife and a mother, like if I wasn't that, what was I? I was still a mother, but my children were nearly at the age where they were looking at, one was 15, 3 children, 15 to 18. So I was on the cusp of that, of an empty nest. And I was just shocked. I was also, because I was Catholic, I didn't believe in divorce. And I just always thought you could work on it and make it work. But that wasn't the case, of course, because you can't make someone do what you don't want to. But that was my identity. It was really scary. I guess I hadn't had to really just trust myself. I knew I was strong, but I was worried about the money. I was worried about my ex-husband and the fact that I couldn't see how he could survive without me. Clearly not true. I was just full of fear, loneliness, because I didn't have anyone else. I was mostly estranged from my family, my biological family. I didn't have any friends because I was completely isolated. And also, I just couldn't see a version of me without my husband. It was horrible. Of course, I was questioning myself. How would I survive? Would he come back? Would I want to take him back? What was I going to do? Just so many questions and unsurety and feeling of abandonment. To some extent, my biggest fear had always been being single and alone. And this is where I was. I had the girls, but I knew that I was just going to end up alone. And that was always my worst fear. And now it was coming true. I'm always a person that likes to have an action list. And I realised at that point that I had decisions to make. I could decide to sit around and hope that he would come back. And maybe he would, maybe he wouldn't. I strongly suspected, rightly or wrongly, that if it didn't work out, that of course I would be a plan B. But I had to decide, did I want to be that plan B? I had to think about, money. Luckily, in terms of child support and that, I never had any issues with him regarding that. And so my options were to stay small or rebuild something completely different. The first sort of the way I started my healing was I decided that I wanted to go and see a psychic. Now, I was Catholic, and being Catholic, you're not allowed to see psychics. And for whatever reason, as soon as he left, that was what I wanted to do, because I wanted to see whether I was meant to be with him or if it was okay for me to let him go. And so my hairdresser told me of one that they'd been to, and so I made a booking and I went to see her. So she was a psychic, but she was predominantly a spiritual coach. And so she told me that my soul contract with him was ended, and that I didn't need to take him back, and that I could rebuild. And that really made me feel better about it, because, I just couldn't imagine not being with him, because it had been like my whole adult life, basically. And then yeah, she then suggested that I go to a spiritual church. At that point, I had been literally feeling like I was going crazy because everywhere it was just going round and round and round in my head, and it was just driving me crazy, driving me insane. So I had gone to a hypnotist, and I had found that that was very helpful, but it was expensive. And she'd suggested going to a spiritual church because I was kind of intrigued about the idea of learning more about the whole thing. She had mentioned that I was a healer, so I wanted to learn more about that because that intrigued me. And so then I started going there. And in the spiritual, when you're there during the service, they always have a meditation. And I actually found that during in the meditation, that I'd end up with the same benefit as the hypnosis about cutting the thoughts, just cutting that thought pattern to try and, I think it's like some kind of neurological link that because you've had that all the time, it's just normal for that person to be there. And so I just started to go to that, have my meditations, and then also mentally, like if I was driving and I was thinking about it, I'd make myself suddenly be aware of the sky and driving, and by doing that over time I was able to just stop those reoccurring thoughts. The first small thing, that was a fairly major thing, because the other thing I needed to do was build community, which I did, because I thought if I go to the spiritual church, etc., that I would meet people and then I'd start to build a community. And I did that. And I also started going to healing circles, which I went to 2 a week. And it took a while, but they were really helpful and beneficial. I think it's like building a muscle, because you start off and there you are and you don't know where you're going. But I slowly just I made the decision to just deal with the grief and get over it. And poor girls, had to listen to me sing empowerment songs and just deal with it. I started to make plans. I actually decided I was going to import some horse floats because we were into horses. And so that was a plan to help, side hustle, make some money. And so I started working towards that. So I was working towards healing my spirit, and then also healing, trying to organize money, so that I could start to create a life. Since that time, I imported 4 horse floats and sold those. I went to university, and then I did a 2-year full-time degree, and then ended up with a degree in social science, majoring in counselling. I then completely changed because I was in a sales career and I was changing to community. So I started getting some community roles, and that's just sort of led to me, because I wanted to help people, and that's why I'm doing this, because I want to sort of help one person to see that there's light at the end of the tunnel. That's what I want to do, because honestly, if you kind of self-direct, if you look for healing, you can do it 100%. I did it, and I just think life can be so much better, because you can look at it as being the worst thing that happened, but for me it was the best thing that happened. It created a complete pivot in my life. Oh, there's a dolphin going by. That's exciting. And look, I'm on a houseboat. Like, I would never have imagined that. Never, ever, ever. I never planned to come to Perth, ever. And I never thought that my home would be a houseboat. But you know what? It was all through divine. I think it was all because I've aligned my life with gratitude and manifestation. I didn't, in a way, mentally think I was going to manifest this, but I can see all the steps, the universe behind the what's happening. I can just see how all the steps it took to come here. So subsequent to me getting into spirituality and growing, and I've done my Reiki healing, I'm a Reiki master, etc. But I kept getting told for different readings that I'd had that you're going to live on the water or near the water. I was saying that. I'm going, I'm not going to live on the water. I thought they meant when you say on the water, it's like right next to the water, near the beach or something, so you're on the water. I'm in a houseboat and I'm literally living on the water. So I thought maybe going overseas, because I actually went to Thailand and been over there. I'm thinking, like, what's it going to be? And it's actually happened. And it's not anything that I would ever have planned. Now I'm just really independent. Like I make all my decisions. I do what I want. I sleep in if I want. I buy what I want. I just, just do it. I don't have to consider other people, which is amazing. I consider other people to the extent that I want to make sure that I remain independent. I don't want to be a burden to my children. I want to communicate and help them. But in terms of just generally my life, I don't have to worry. So the one thing I was worried about, being alone, best thing ever. I have my little sidekick, my little cat, and Yow Yow, or Yowie, and I love him to bits. So I don't feel alone at all. I live now that I'm living in a marina. There's a community, so I talk to people. So I'm not isolated. I have a job, so I have workmates. I've been working on my actual physical health, because after COVID and living with my daughter, I'd become very unfit, loss of muscle, etc. And now I'm able to be, because being on a boat, you do have to have a certain level of balance and that, but that's all grown. I've got great balance now. I can sort of get up and down on the jetty to tie ropes and not. I can climb into my tinny. I can do all that. I'm also a lot stronger. Like for a long time, I needed the trolley to carry stuff along here because I had issues with my shoulders. Now they're fine. I've healed those. I can just carry stuff up and down. It's not a problem. My mobility's fine. I don't have any aches or pains or any kind of pain whatsoever in my body. It's amazing. And it's just a journey. I really have a clearer sense of myself now, especially like going to university. Before I went to uni, I always did. I felt like I'd started courses and then I'd stopped them and I hadn't completed them. So I kind of felt like I hadn't finished anything. No, I did the degree and I finished it. It was amazing. And for some strange reason, I think I'd always had a sense of imposter syndrome, but doing the degree, not that people don't have to do a degree, but achieving a goal, because that was an educational goal that I had for myself, I just feel so full of confidence now. I'm a completely different person. I mean, even at the time that I was going to uni, and I knew some ladies there from there was like a career centre, and they said, wow, you're completely different to last year. And even now, if you see photos, which I will provide at some other point, I do look completely different. I've lost 20 kilos. I'm blonde, I'm also older, but I feel great. I just feel so good. I think the thing is, now I live an intentional life. Everything's organised. I've got some travel later in the year, and I do plan. I sort of have everything, like I've got everything sorted out. Like I've had to, because I'm a bit of a, don't know if it's ADHD or whatever. I can be a bit scattered, but now I know exactly what I'm doing, and it's amazing. So I just thought I'd share this with you. If you have any questions, comments, or if you'd like to just mention what you're doing, or if you have any issues that you're trying to deal with, let me know and I'll answer all the questions in the comments, because really I just think it's great to, share everyone's different stories, because it's always helpful. Certainly listening to other people's stories has helped me.